welcome back to session 4 of A Journey Through Jewish American History. This one is called Contemporary Issues and Future Directions. We're going to focus on later 20th century hardships for Jews in America and discuss what's been happening with the Jewish community as of now in the last few years and where it is headed. So Jewish contributions to American life have been rich, to say the least. During the Civil Rights Movement, they were allied with the African American community. They made medical advances in polio, vaccines, measles vaccines, mammograms, the Heimlich maneuver, etc. And that right there is Jonas Salk, of course, who invented the polio vaccine. Gender equality, Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the Supreme Court, feminist movement, marriage equality, LGBTQ plus rights, and in the entertainment industry, music, comedy, film, from the early 20th century to the present day with Tiffany Haddish hosting Saturday Night Live. More Jewish contributions to American life have included Levi Strauss. He was an immigrant from Germany and, of course, invented the blue jeans in 1873. Baseball player Sandy Koufax, a Los Angeles Dodger, refused to play in the first game of the 1965 World Series because it fell on Yom Kippur, a very, very famous Dodger history fact for all of us out there. Judith Resnick, she was the first Jewish astronaut in space. She tragically died in the Challenger shuttle disaster in 1986. Russian-born songwriter Irving Berlin. He was born Israel Isidore Balin. He wrote God Bless America and White Christmas, among many, many songs. And finally, E.Y. Yip Harburg. He was born to Yiddish-speaking parents from Minsk. He wrote the lyrics to the Oscar-winning song Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz. So now we kind of turn to the tragedy that befalls us today. Charlottesville, 2017, not that long ago. We saw several individuals, white supremacists, white nationalists. They rallied to the University of Virginia in a Unite the Right rally. They were protesting the removal of a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. They had tiki torches. They were giving the Heil Hitler salute. They were famously chanting, "Jews will not replace us," and other Nazi slogans like blood and soil. Some of their banners even read, "Jews are Satan's children." So this was going on. I mean, you can see here, unlike the KKK, these individuals are unmasked. We can see their clothing, we can see their faces, their expressions, very, very blatant anti-Semitism compared to the anti-Semitism that was happening in the very early 20th century. This is a story that's a little bit close to my heart because I used to teach in Orange County, California, Blaise Bernstein. And it came right after New Year's, January 2018. Blaise Bernstein was a gay Jewish college student in Pennsylvania. He was home for the holidays when he went to meet up with a former classmate, Samuel Woodward. He was lured to a park in Lake Forest, California, not far from his home. They lived in Irvine, and he was stabbed 19 times. Later on, it was found that Woodward was a follower of an online white supremacy group, neo-Nazi group called Atomwaffen. And he even attended an Atomwaffen camp, much like a Nazi camp, kind of teaching him how to be a Nazi and how to give the salutes. Blaze was the grandson of Holocaust survivors. So he did receive justice. Samuel Woodward was convicted not too long ago. Um, but this new type of hatred that Blaze's case brings up is this emboldening of neo Nazis and white supremacists sitting at their computer screens, facing no one else. It's just them. And maybe they're alone at night or during the day and they get hooked into one of these groups. I think that's what happened with a teenager like Samuel Woodward. He fell victim to one of these notorious white supremacist groups. Then on October 27th, 2018, we saw the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 11 people were killed at the shooting, and the shooter was allegedly making anti-Semitic remarks even after he was being arrested. So these people were there for service and a Torah study, and it turned tragic. Now, today, we're seeing since October 7th, 2023, with Hamas's surprise attack on Israel, college students are now protesting Israel and protesting in favor of Hamas, a terrorist organization. They've been waving the Palestinian flag, donning keffiyehs, and chanting "From the river to the sea" in the streets and university campuses like Columbia, Harvard, Berkeley, and throughout the United States. So you can see a picture of a lot of them here. So why does anti-Semitism exist? This is an important reminder in following up with the last session where we talked about the origins of anti-Semitism. So let's take a look.
If you asked most Westerners today whether they oppose anti-Semitism, most would likely say yes. And yet, whenever something terrible happens in the world, it seems like it's only a matter of time before someone blames the Jews for it. No, seriously, those are all real. The problem is not just words. It's conspiracy theories that have deadly consequences, as massacres of Jews from Pittsburgh to Paris demonstrate.
At lunchtime today, a man armed with machine guns walked into this kosher supermarket and took more than a dozen people hostage.
The gunman was killed, but tragically so too were 4 of the hostages.
Far from fading away, anti-Jewish prejudice seems as resilient as ever. So if we agree that anti-Semitism is bad, why is it still such a big problem? That's where this series comes in. By answering some of the biggest questions about anti-Semitism, the sort that confuse many people and keep them from seeing and confronting the hate, we'll learn together how to effectively tackle anti-Semitism, what it actually is, how to recognize it, and what to do about it. Didn't anti-Semitism go away after the Holocaust?
Jews will not replace us!
Apparently not. Yet a surprising number of people think that anti-Jewish bigotry was stamped out after the horrors of Nazi Germany. After all, didn't we make a bunch of Holocaust movies and get past this stuff? But while it's comforting to imagine that anti-Semitism largely disappeared after World War II, it's far from accurate. And if we make the mistake of reducing anti-Semitism to the Holocaust, its most extreme manifestation, we're likely to miss much of the problem today. That's because the Holocaust wasn't an anti-Semitic exception. It was anti-Semitism's culmination. The systematic murder of 6 million Jews across Europe didn't happen in a vacuum. It came after years of religious, scientific, cultural, and political anti-Semitism. For centuries, European Jews were barred from most professions, forcibly converted to other faiths, and subjected to murderous rampages, constant expulsions, and periodic inquisitions. In other words, the mass murder of European Jewry would not have been possible without many centuries of anti-Jewish ideas and assumptions. Take the Holocaust away, and you still have this massive anti-Semitic foundation underneath. In fact, we are still living with it. Put another way, just as slavery's abolition in America didn't end racism, the defeat of Nazi Germany didn't end anti-Semitism. The statistics bear this out. According to the FBI, American Jews are annually subject to the most hate crimes of any religious group, despite making up only 2% of the US population. Not only that, but since the FBI began tracking these crimes, more of them have been committed against Jews than all these groups combined. Hate crime statistics are an imperfect metric, but they give you a sense of the ugly anti-Jewish undercurrent that has always lurked beneath the surface. Recently, more people have started to notice this unsettling reality, as American Jews have been subjected to a series of anti-Semitic terrorist attacks and massacres. These include the mass shooting at Pittsburgh's Tree of Life Synagogue in October 2018.
Contact! Shots fired!
The April 2019 attack on a synagogue in Poway, California. The shooting at a kosher supermarket in Jersey City, New Jersey in December 2019.
3 people inside that store were killed by flying pieces of metal during the gunfire.
There is no question that this is a hate crime, and anti-Semitism should be called out aggressively and firmly, immediately, for what it is.
And the mass stabbing of religious Jews at their Hanukkah celebration that same month by a machete-wielding assailant in Muncie, New York. Yet as bad as this is, the picture is considerably darker in Europe. In 2018, CNN surveyed European attitudes towards Jewish people. They found that more than a quarter of Europeans believe that Jews have too much influence in finance. Nearly 1 in 4 said that Jews had too much influence in wars and conflicts around the world. 1 in 5 Europeans said that Jews had too much influence in the media, and almost the same number claimed that they have too much influence in politics. These conspiracy theories about vast Jewish power are particularly ludicrous when you realize that Jews constitute less than 0.2% of the entire European population, and most Europeans have never even met one. The consequences of this widespread hostility towards Jews, however, are severe. In 2013 and 2018, researchers at the European Union's Agency for Fundamental Rights asked Jews about their experiences of anti-Semitism. What they found was alarming. Nearly 40% of European Jews were afraid of publicly identifying as Jewish. Nearly half were worried about being the victim of anti-Semitic harassment in the next 12 months. And 1/3 feared being the victim of a physical assault. And for good reason. In recent years, Jews have been the victims of brutal anti-Semitic attacks at schools and synagogues across Europe. Put together, it's easy to understand why so many of Europe's Jews still live in fear 75 years after the Holocaust, why nearly 40% of them say they've considered leaving because they don't feel safe, and why millions of them already have. The same is true in many non-Western countries. Jews in Arab and Muslim lands once numbered nearly 1 million, but now number only a few thousand, having been persecuted to the point of expulsion or flight in the last century. And anti-Jewish prejudice has persisted throughout the region, even in the absence of Jews. Why does this matter to us? Because if we only see and confront anti-Semitism when it looks like the Holocaust or is committed by obvious actors like neo-Nazis, we're likely to miss much of it. Which means that society will only notice the problem when it explodes into deadly violence, as in Pittsburgh or Paris, and it's already too late. Instead, we should understand the Holocaust as a cautionary tale for what happens when more common outgrowths of anti-Semitism go unchecked, and resolve to beat those back together. As for how to do that, well, first we need to settle the biggest question about anti-Semitism of all. Whose fault is anti-Semitism?
So now we're looking at the picture of the future of American Jews. And despite what it might look like in that video, a little grim, a little hopeless, there is hope and there is strength in community. And if we've learned anything from the previous sessions in this series, is that through the good and the bad, Jews tend to come together and put their differences aside, whether they're Orthodox or Reform or Constructionist, and bond together to make something good. So this comes from Gil Preuss, the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington. He says, "There is no question that the Jewish community that I have experienced growing up in the last few decades of the 20th century in America is under attack. A community built on confidence in engaging and expressing its Jewishness publicly within an increasingly open and welcoming America is facing growing threats. While there have been other phases of American history with significant anti Semitism, the rise in anti Semitism over the past decade, especially since October 7th, has led to an uncertain future. But I just want you to see these faces. They're the very antithesis of that. As her shirt says, this is what Jewish looks like. Um, we go over in teaching the Holocaust that the Nazis were so fixed on physical stereotypes of Jews, when in reality, it can be anyone. Anyone can be Jewish, anyone can convert to Judaism, anyone can be born into a Jewish family. So we'll just close with some of these statistics. The Pew Research Center projects that the Jewish population will increase from 14.2 million in 2015 to 16.4 million in 2060. The Jewish population in the US has grown by 10% in the past 7 years, according to a study by Brandeis University's Steinhardt Social Research Institute. And that concludes our series. Thank you so much for watching.